Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to study a complete ISO 20022 customer payment journey through one practical business case study. The case begins with a normal supplier payment of amount 40,750 euros against an invoice. The first payment is processed. However, an ERP retry generates a second payment for the same invoice. The second payment is also processed and credited, which means the sender now needs to recover the duplicate fund. So that is the whole context of the case study. To understand the full journey, we will follow six important ISO 20022 messages. We will begin with PEX 008 for the interbank customer credit transfer. Then we will examine PEX 002 for payment status. We will use CAMT 054 for customer account notification. Then after a duplicate payment is discovered, we will follow CAMT 056 for the cancellation request, CAMT 029 for the investigation result, and PEX 004 for the actual return of funds. By the end of this video, you should be able to develop an approach to look at the flow of payment messages in real-time scenario. So I have used the XML messages for the presentation in simplified and reduced format so that everyone can understand easily. I um I have only highlighted those fields that matter to our business case study. Okay, let us first understand the business storyline. So Novatech. So Novatech is a debtor in our case study. In plain language, Novatech is a company that owes money and instruct the payment. So Sunrise Bank is a Novatech's bank. That is, it is a debtor asset. Alpine Components um, is a creditor, the party that should receive the money. And Eurobridge Bank is a Alpine's bank. That is a creditor bank. So the invoice amount the invoice number is INB 20264481, and the amount to be transferred is 40,750 euro. So Novatech sends the first instruction to Sunrise Bank to create a PEX.008. Eurobridge Bank will accept it and process it, and Alpine receives the credit. So up to this point, everything is normal. Now the problem begins when Novatech's ERP appears to freeze. So a user retries a payment. The retry is not a copy of the same technical message. It becomes a new payment instruction with a new transaction identification and a new UETR. From a business perspective, it's a duplicate because the pair, pay, invoice, and the amount are all same. From a narrow technical perspective, however, the identifiers are different. Uh, the distinction between a business duplicate and a technical duplicate is extremely important topic to understand. A system that checks only whether the UETR or transaction ID has already been seen may not detect this second payment. A more advanced duplicate control engine may also compare amount, currency, account, date, remittance information, and invoice reference. So in our case study, the second instruction is not stopped, and Alpine, the creditor, receives the money twice, which is not correct. So technically, Alpine should return the second payment back to Novatech. So Novatech then raises a duplicate payment recall request with the Sunrise Bank. Sunrise cannot simply delete the second payment because it has already been processed. Sunrise now need to ask Eurobridge to investigate whether the duplicate can be recovered. So Eurobridge will check the payment and then confirm the duplicate, verify that the funds are available, and obtain whatever consent or authority is required under the applicable process. The outcome shown on this particular screen on the slide is successful. The outcome is shown as successful, return completed. The cancellation request is accepted. Alpine's duplicate credit is debited. The funds are returned to the Sunrise through PEX.004, and Sunrise credits Novatech. The purpose of the rest of the presentation is to trace this outcome message by message. Okay, this flowchart is a map for the entire tutorial. We have four different vertical lines: Novatech, Sunrise Bank, Eurobridge Bank, and the Alpine components. So in the first phase, Novatech sends a payment instruction to Sunrise Bank. Um, so I'm deliberately using the generic words payment instruction because the customer to bank channel could be an ERP file, an API, a portal instruction, or even a pain.001 message, depending upon the implementation. Now, Sunrise then sends a PEX 008 customer credit transfer to Eurobridge Bank. This is the interbank payment instruction for the customer transfer. So, Eurobridge Bank responds back with PEX 002. So after Eurobridge Bank books the credit to Alpine's account, Eurobridge sends Alpine a CAMT 054 credit notification in this scenario. So that notification is different from your PAX.002. So PAX.002 tells Sunrise what happened to the interbank payment instruction, whereas CAMT 054 tells Alpine what happened on the Alpine's account. Now the second phase. So the second phase repeats the payment part. Novatex ERP generates another payment instruction. Sunrise creates a second PAX.008. Eurobridge sends a separate PAX.002 for the transaction, and Alpine receives a second CAMT054 credit notification. The second payment has its own message and transaction references, even though it relates to the same invoice. Okay, the third phase is the recall and a return journey. So Novatech asks Sunrise to recover the duplicate. So Sunrise will send a CAMT056 cancellation request to Eurobridge Bank. Eurobridge investigates and sends a CAMT.029 back to the Sunrise. In our case study, the answer is positive. So about the duplicate, once the duplicate credit is removed from Alpine's account, Eurobridge can notify Alpine of the debit through CAMT054 message. Eurobridge then returns the interbank funds to Sunrise using PAX.004. So after Sunrise receives and books the return amount, Sunrise notifies Novatech of the credit through another CAMT 054 notification. Okay, now we begin with the original, the valid payment. So Novatech tells Sunrise Bank that please transfer 48,750 euros to Alpine Components for invoice INB 20264481. Now Sunrise converts that business instruction into an interbank PAX.008. PAX.008 is nothing but the financial institution to financial institution customer credit transfer. The important phase is customer credit transfer here. So the underlying payment is between two customers, Novatech and Alpine. But the ISO 20022 message shown here is exchanged between their financial institutions. So at the top of this XML, we have the group header. Inside group header, the message ID or message identification identifies this particular PAX.008 message. Here the value is something like SCB 2220260010001. A bank should control this identifier so that the message can be uniquely referenced and operationally tracked. Then we have number of transaction. Is one because it is one because this example contains one transaction. Settlement information shows in the for this training case study, INDA basically means the settlement arrangement for this leg is handled by the instructed agent. That is, Sunrise Bank has a euro account with Eurobridge Bank, and this is an assumption for this case study. Another corridor or scheme may use a different permitted settlement method. For example, there are other settlement methods like INGA, then cover, and so on. Now, inside the credit transfer transaction information block, inside this particular block, the payment identification block contains several references, end-to-end ID. So this is the business reference that links the payment to the invoice. Because the duplicate relates to the same invoice, this value will be repeated in the second payment as also. Then we have transaction ID. Transaction ID is it is a transaction identification assigned within the interbank processing chain for this payment. Then we have EVTR. EVTR is the is basically designed to identify and track the payment end to end across the institution. Now, do not treat message ID, end to end ID, transaction ID, and EVTR as interchangeable. message ID defines your message. End-to-end ID carries the initiating party's business reference. Transaction ID basically identifies the transaction in the interbank context, and EVTR is a globally unique checking reference for the payment. The interbank settlement amount in this case is 48,750 euro. The message identifies Novatech as the debtor, Sunrise as a debtor agent, Eurobridge Bank as the creditor agent, and Alpine Components as the creditor. With the remittance information carries the remittance information basically carries the invoice reference. So Alpine can reconcile the incoming credit with its receivable. This particular screen also shows a charge as shared. This means charges are shared according to the applicable announcement. So that field is not expanded, it's not shown in this particular XML part, but it is part of the business data considered when constructing the payment. So in a schema valid pax.008, party elements content is structured sub elements. For example, a party name normally appears inside a name element. I have recently shortened the structure so we can focus on the identifiers and business meaning. The most important lesson is that the original pax.008 creates the reference set that every letter message must use. When a duplicate is recalled, the bank must identify the second transaction, not accidentally reference this first valid payment. So after Eurobridge Bank receives the pax.008, it needs to report the processing status to Sunrise. So this is the role. There is a role of pax.002, the FI to FI payment status report. The first job of pax.002 is correlation. So Eurobridge identifies the original message as pax.008 and repeats the original message identification as SCB 2026080101 under message ID in pax.008. At the transaction level, it also carries the original end-to-end ID, the original transaction identification, and original EVTR. Right? This is why good reference management is so important. So Sunrise should be able to receive the pax.002 and immediately associate with the correct outgoing payment record. If the reference are missing, altered, or mapped incorrectly, operation team may see an unmatched record. The transaction status for this particular message is basically says SESP. SESP basically means accepted for settlement processing. In simple language, the message has passed the relevant checks at this stage and has been accepted for settlement processing. However, SCSP does not mean Alpine's account has been credited. It is not the same as customer account notifications, and it is not automatically proof of final settlement in every environment. The status region says that the validation was successful or that the payment was accepted after validation. Uh, Status region information adds context. Status region information adds context, especially when a transaction is rejected, pending, or subjected to another outcome. So in real implementation, you may encounter several status values depending on the scheme and stage. For example, technical acceptance, acceptance for settlement processing, completed processing, or rejection. So always interpret the status according to the applicable users guideline rather than relying on the code name alone. So at this moment in our story, Sunrise knows that Eurobridge has accepted the original packs of 008 for processing. Alpine's actual account credit is shown separately on the next slide through KMT 054. Before we move ahead, you can also give a look at this message ID, the original transaction ID, the UETR, the original end-to-end ID. So this all value basically matches with whatever the value we have seen on the packs of 008. Okay. Now the perspective changes from interbank processing to the customer's account. So after Eurobridge books the original payment to Alpine's account, Eurobridge sends Alpine a KMT 054 debit credit notification. In this scenario, the formal message name for this KMT 054 is bank to customer debit credit notification. It is sent by an account servicer to the account owner or to another party authorized to receive the account information. It may report one or more debit credit entries. The account belongs to the Alpine components. The entry amount is how much? It was 40,050 euros. So you will see credit debit information, CRDT. So this basically means credit, which means this is a credit entry. The status is book, meaning the entry is booked rather than merely pending. Booking, there's a booking date also. So booking date records when the bank posted the entry. Then there's a concept of value date also. So value date basically represents the date from which the funds carry financial value for the account. Although the simplified XML on this slide focuses mainly on the booking date and transaction references. Within the entry details, the transaction references include your end-to-end ID. So you can, if you go to pax008, you will find the same end-to-end ID there as well, and you have transaction ID also. So you will find the same transaction ID in pax008. The remittance information says payment for invoice INB 20264481. So these details allow Alpine's ERP or treasury system to reconcile the bank entry. Now the ERP can match the amount, invoice reference, payer information, and payment identifiers against the open receivable. Once matched, the original invoice can be marked as paid. So this screen also reinforces the differences between two messages, PAX.002 and CAMT054. So PAX.002 is a bank-to-bank status report about the PAX.008. CAMT054 is an account notification to the customer. So once one reports payment processing status, while the other reports an entry on an account. Now, not every bank delivers CAMT054 for every transaction. Some customers receive, some can receive CAMT053. Some customers may receive CAMT053, which is a statement, then the APIs, portal alerts, or other reporting services. For this case study, CAMT054 is a Susan customer notification mechanism. Okay, now we shall see why a duplicate payment is dangerous. So a user who was initiating payment instruction for the Novatech clicks submit again by mistake after the ERP appears to freeze. So from the user's perspective, the user may believe that the first instruction was not sent, but the ERP creates a new instruction, and Sunrise Bank creates a new PAX.008 message. Now compare the two panels, the first payment and the second payment. The amount is identical. It's again 40,750, 40,750. The invoice is also identical. The debtor, creditor, and payment purpose are all the same, right? But the technical identity is different. The first payment has transaction ID ending with 101, whereas in the second payment it's ending with 102. It also has different UETR value, right? So a duplicate check that looks only for an exact repeat of transaction ID or UETR may conclude that these are two independent payments. That is why payment engines often use multiple layers of duplicate detection. Technical duplicate detection may compare message identifiers, instruction identifiers, transaction identifiers, and UETRs. Business duplicate detection may compare debtor account, creditor account, amount, currency, requested execution date, invoice reference, remittance information, and a defined time window. The challenge is balancing the risk and customer experience. So if controls are too weak, duplicate payments easily escape. If controls are too aggressive, legitimate repeat payments such as two installments of the same amount may also get blocked. So we require a well-designed system that may stop the instruction, warn the user, or route it for manual review based on the strength of the matching. So in our case study, the second payment passes through. It receives its own PAX of 002 with an accepted for processing status that we have already seen for the first payment in earlier two slides. Eurobridge credits Alpine again. Alpine receives another CAMT054 credit notification. At this point, the invoice is effectively paid twice. The first payment must remain untouched. Every cancellation and return reference from now on must identify the second transaction, that is this transaction, ending with the transaction ID ending with 102 and the EUT ending with, having this value, right? So Novatech now discovers the duplicate and contacts Sunrise Bank. Once the second payment has already been processed, Sunrise cannot simply delete the transaction from the history. The payment has already crossed an institutional boundary and may already have affected the settlement and the beneficiary's account. Sunrise therefore sends CAMT056, the FI to FI payment cancellation request, to Eurobridge Bank. The message asks Eurobridge to investigate whether the identified payment can be cancelled or returned. The business request on the slide is clear. Our customer has identified the second payment as a duplicate, and so please investigate whether it can be cancelled and returned. So if you look at this XML message, there's an assignment assignment block that identifies the current cancellation assignment. The value this value is shown on the slide is the cash ID. So a more precise description is the cancellation reference or assignment identification, right? Um, because the displayed value sits in the assignment identification element. Banks may also maintain internal cash identifier. Banks may also maintain internal cash identifier or use additional cash management structures according to the message version and usage guideline. So assigner is your Sunrise Commercial Bank, the Sunrise Bank, the debtors bank, who is assigning the cancellation investigation. Assignee is the Eurobridge Bank, because Eurobridge Bank must investigate and respond back. The underlying the underlying transaction section points back to the duplicate PAX.008 message. It identifies the original message type, original instruction identification, original end-to-end transaction identification, original transaction ID, and original EUTR. Notice the original transaction ID is ending with 1002 and the original EUTR is ending is having this is beginning with the number 66666. So these are the duplicate references. If someone has accidentally used the first payments identifier, Eurobridge could investigate the valid payment instead. The original interbank settlement amount is your 48,750. There's a cancellation region as well. The cancellation region is shown as DUPL, meaning duplicate payment. Additional information additional information explains that an ERP retry created the second payment. Um, the original instruction identification shown here is INST 2026080110. So that value was not displayed on the earlier simplified PAX.008 slide that we came across, but it would be stored in the original payments record and can be used as another correlation field. So most importantly, CAMT056 does not move funds and does not guarantee success as well. That is payment return. It starts or advances the cancellation investigation. The beneficiary bank still has to determine whether the payment can be stopped, reversed, or returned. Now this is important because CAMT 029 should not be treated as an automatic reply generated without an investigation. So Eurobridge must examine the specific duplicate transaction before deciding the outcome. Step 1 is to locate the original payment. So Eurobridge searches using the EUTR, using transaction ID, using end-to-end identification amount and other references. The goal is to identify the second payment with certainty. Step 2 is to confirm that it is generally a duplicate payment. The bank compares your invoice reference, amount, pair, beneficiary, context. So two payments of the same amount are not automatically duplicates. There must be enough evidence that the second instruction was unintended. Coming to step 3. Step 3 is to check fund availability and account status. So if Alpine has, that is the beneficiary has already used or withdrawn the funds, or if the account is blocked or subject to another restriction, the return may not be straightforward. The step 4 is to decide. Step 4 is to confirm the consent and applicable rules. So depending on the scheme, account terms, jurisdiction, and timing, the bank may need the beneficiary's agreement or another legal or operational basis to debit the account. Step 5 is to decide the outcome. So Eurobridge may accept the cancellation request, reject it, or keep it pending while further action is required. So in our case study, Alpine confirms that the second credit is a duplicate. So the money remains available and the applicable process for allows Eurobank to proceed. Therefore, Eurobridge can send a positive CAMT029 back to Sunrise Bank. So this is why a recall should be understood as a best effort recovery process after the payment has been credited. The sending customer should not assume that the raising a recall immediately guarantees a refund. So after completing the investigation, Eurobank responds to Sunrise using CAMT029, the resolution of investigation message. So observe the assignment direction here. Assignment direction is now reversed. Eurobridge is the assigner now, and assigner is the Sunrise Bank. The message contains its own assignment identification. This is the assignment identification, and it refers back to the cancellation workflow and the original duplicate transaction. Right? The transaction information repeats the original instruction identification, end-to-end identification, transaction identification, then the UETR, and so on. So once again, the transaction ending with 1002, UTR beginning with 66666 ensure that the response relates to the duplicate, not a valid payment. The transaction cancellation status is SCCR. SCCR basically means accepted cancellation request. It communicates that Eurobridge has accepted the request based on the investigation outcome. Additional information, additional information basically says that a duplicate has been confirmed and funds are available for return. So this gives Sunrise useful operational context. However, CAMT 029 does not move the 48,750 euro. It communicates a decision. Sunrise should not credit Novatec merely because it says a positive CAMT 029 unless its processing and accounting rules explicitly support the timing and it has a corresponding return or a settlement in evidence. So the next step in this story, in this case study, is to debit the duplicate credit from Alpine's account and return the interbank funds through PAX to 004. So now we reach the message that actually returns the interbank funds, that is PAX to 004, the payment return message. So Eurobank sends PAX to 004 to Sunrise after the duplicate credit is recoverable and return process is authorized. The message points back to the second PAX.008 and creates a new return transaction. The return message has its own message ID. This identifies the PAX.004. It also has a return identification. This value identifies the individual return transaction. The message then repeats the original message type and original payment references. So original end-to-end remains the same because the return relates to that invoice payment. Original transaction ID is again here ending with 1002, and original EUT is again the same, starting with 666. The returned interbank settlement amount is your 48,750. In this case, the full duplicate amount is entered. In other situation, the return amount may require a careful interpretation of charges, currency conversion, or partial recovery are involved, subject to the relevant debt. The return region is shown as duplicate, and the additional information says the payment is being returned following the accepted cancellation request. So operationally, PAX.004 allows Sunrise to match the incoming return with the ongoing duplicate payment and the cancellation case. Sunrise can update the payment status, reconcile the settlement movement, and prepare the customer credit. So when we say that PAX.004 moves funds, remember that the message instructs and records the interbank return within the applicable uh, settlement process. The actual discharge of the obligation occurs through the relevant settlement arrangement. It is not a literal packet of money traveling inside the XML. Text of 004 is not the same as customer's account credit advice. Once Sunrise books the return to Novatex account, Sunrise can notify Novatex through CAMT 054, as we will see in the next slide. So the interbank return creates two customer-facing account events in this scenario. On the left, the Eurobridge notifies Alpine that a duplicate credit has been debited or reversed. The entry is your debit for 48,550. This the reference points back to the duplicate transaction ending 1002. Alpine's ERP should reverse the second receipt and reopen or correct any reconciliation that treated the duplicate as a valid second payment. On the right, Sunrise notifies the Novatech, the debtor, that the returned duplicate funds have been credited back. The entry is credited for 48,750. The notification references the return identification or another available return reference. Novatech's ERP now close the duplicate payment case. It should link the credit to the original duplicate payment, clear any temporary receivable from the bank, and preserve the audit trail from the second instruction through recall and reforms. So these two CAMT 054 messages report account posting. They do not replace CAMT 029 or PAX 004. The CAMT 029 explains the investigation outcome, and the PAX 004 handles the interbank return. CAMT 054 messages tell the customers what was posted to their account. So the debit and credit notifications may not arrive at exactly the same moment. Timing depends upon the bank processing completion, settlement completion, and the customer reporting service. The important point is that both sides must ultimately reconcile the return correctly. So you can see the simple XML message here in the below. From an accounting perspective, the duplicate credit is removed from the duplicate credit is removed from Alpine, and the duplicate payment amount is restored to Novatech. The first valid payment, the first valid payment remains credited to the Alpine, so the invoice is still paid once, with the intended business outcome. Okay. Okay. Now let us let us now look at the complete message role summary. We had PAX.008. It was an instruction. It says please execute this interbank customer credit transfer. We have PAX.002 with the status. It says this is the processing outcome of the payment instruction. For example, accepted at particular stage, rejected, or pending according to the applicable code and guideline. Then we had CAMT 054. There's a customer account notification. It says your account has been credited or debited. Then we had CAMT 056. It was a request saying please investigate whether this earlier payment can be cancelled or recalled. We had CAMT 029. It's a response saying the cancellation investigation has been accepted or rejected or remains pending. Then we had PAX 004 with a return. It says the funds related to the original payment are being returned. The easiest way to remember the exception flow is ask, answer, move, and inform. It is CAMT 056 basically asks, CAMT 029 basically answers, and PAX 004 basically moves the return fund. Moves the return to the interbank payment process, whereas your CAMT 054 basically informs the customer about their accounts. And with this, we come to the end of this case study. Before we wrap up, let me just quickly summarize the entire case into one line. In our case study, one invoice becomes two payments. The first payment follows the PAX.008, PAX.002, and CAMT 054, and is correctly credited to Alpine. The duplicate follows the same sequence, a second PAX.002, 008, as a second PAX.002, another CAMT 054. credit notification. Now, Novatech, the debtor, then asks its bank, Sunrise, to recover the duplicate. Sunrise then sends KMT 056 to the creditor's bank, that is Eurobridge. Eurobridge then investigates and answers to KMT 029. Then the creditor's duplicate credit is debited and notified through CAMT 054. Eurobank then sends PEX 004 to return the interbank funds. Sunrise, with the debtors bank, credits Novatech and provides a final customer notification. So the original valid payment remains in place. Only the second payment is reversed and returned. That is why the identifiers are so important throughout this journey. So, if this tutorial has helped you understand how ISO 20022 payment cancellation return messages work together, please do subscribe to my channel. In the comments, tell me which flow to you'd like me to explain next: a rejected cancellation, a partial return, a covered payment recall, or multi-bank correspondence scenario. Um, till then, thank you for watching. I will see you in the next tutorial.